Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to continue our study of meditation and how it applies to life based on the teachings of Rabbi Kaplan and many other experts. As I mentioned previously, I'm going to keep everybody, and I'm not going to mute everybody. So feel free to ask pertinent questions and make pertinent comments as we go. If you want to get a little bit more in depth and get off the beaten track and talk about other stuff, we'll have the schmooze section at the end. And in between this presentation and the schmooze section, we will have a meditation so everybody gets a firm understanding of what we're talking about. Okay, so without further ado, we're going to share screen. Here it is. Okay. When we last left off, we were going through Rabbi Kaplan's presentation on the Amidah, the central Jewish prayer, as a meditation. And very interestingly, we learned that the entire ritual of saying that prayer, from the direction you're facing to the position you're holding to what you're saying and then some, is a meditation within a meditation within a meditation. Rather fascinating. Okay. We're right now going to review and go more in depth on his instruction on the importance of standing still when you say the Amidah. So let me get his book, Jewish Meditation, and tell you what he has to say. Okay. With the exception of bowing, and as you know, bowing happens at key points of this prayer. With the exception of bowing, it is preferable to remain absolutely motionless during the Amidah. Some people have the habit of shaking and swaying during this prayer, but the codes of Jewish law regard this more as a nervous habit than as a means of improving one's concentration. Both the Kabbalists and many other codifiers state explicitly that all motion should be avoided in the Amidah. If you find it impossible to remain absolutely still, you may sway very slightly, but excessive shaking or swaying tends to impair concentration in a meditative state. Okay, so the emphasis here is on standing still, not shuckling. And you've seen people go through various expressions. Okay, why? Okay, so we're going to understand the benefit from a spiritual point of view and many other points of view of standing still. To start off with, we're going to mention what Daniel Yoel Cohen has says. He talks about standing still. You can see he's a spiritual teacher, Center for Jewish Spirituality, and so on. He says, and we reviewed this a few weeks ago, but it's important to remind ourselves of what he says. He says that Kabbalistic and Hasidic teachings teach that there is a constant flux of energy from the divine into the world, yet we rarely perceive this in our daily lives. Could it be that the sense of lack and longing that so many of us experience is a function of our constantly running around? I'm not being still long enough to open to what Rabbi Abraham Isaac Cook called the flowing river of the supernal soul of life. And here's where he talks about the Amidah. The Amidah prayer is the place for this the receiving of this energy, for the meeting of our human yearnings and God's life-giving waters. The Amidah is the centerpiece of Jewish prayer, traditionally recited silently 3 times a day while standing still. The stance of this prayer is rooted in the Bible, which records that the patriarch Abraham, quoting, got up early in the morning to the place where he had stood, and we're going to look at that. Standing contrasts with moving, and the word amad, stood, can also be translated as being still. We're going to look at that. this reading teaches us that the first dimension of prayer is to become still. Okay. So from his spiritual studies, he's talking about the importance of standing still when reciting the Amidah as some kind of energy receptacle, okay? And interestingly, he's making an argument for that by quoting the Bible, and in particular, an incident where Abraham got up early in the morning to the place where he had stood. We had looked at this a couple of weeks ago. We're going to get a little bit more in depth to get a firmer understanding about why this scholar would choose to quote this biblical portion to back up his point that of the importance of standing still. Okay. So, as we do that, I'm going to throw out an idea of the possible meaning of the Hebrew word that's used in the Bible that implies standing still. The root of it is the three letters Ayin Mem Daled, and I'm going to pose that this can be interpreted as saying standing in support of someone, deference, not just standing still, but standing still in support of someone, deferring to them. Okay. So we're going to take a look at Abraham, but first we're going to see what Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch says. He has a great etymological dictionary of biblical Hebrew. He's quite the scholar, and he pays a lot of attention to the meaning of the words and how the meaning of words can be derived by their usage in the text, and also by their how similar their similarity to other words that have similar letters. Okay. He says that the definition of this root for standing still, Ayin Mem Daled, is standing in preparation to act. That's his actual definition. Standing, but not just standing purposeless, you're standing in preparation to act. Okay. We're going to work with this. Now let's go to Abraham. So Daniel Yobel Cohen is quoting this section in the book of Genesis regarding Abraham. Let's see what it says. Okay, what's happening here? We've heard all of the story about Sodom and Gomorrah and what's happening there, and there's various understandings of what they're doing wrong that would get God mad at them. And God is basically saying, I've had enough of these guys. I'm going to go down and see what they have done and mete out some destruction. Okay. So, Abraham, as the Bible says, the Abraham odenu omeid lifnei Hashem. Abraham stood still before Hashem, before God. Okay. So here you have God coming down to mete out punishment, and Abraham is standing still in front of God. And in the famous story that we've learned, he's actually lobbying, advocating on behalf of the people of Sodom and Gomorrah. He's saying, what happens if there's 50 righteous people? You're going to wipe out the whole place? You know, can't you save it for the sake of these 50 righteous people? And he goes through this whole negotiation back and forth, standing still. Okay. So we could see that in this Torah portion, he's standing still, deferring to God. Obviously, we all know who's control. He knows that God's going to run things, but he's still making a point. He's still advocating while he's standing still. Okay. Now, if you fast forward in a continuation of this story, the punishment is being meted out. People are fleeing. and Lot and his family are escaping, and Mrs. Lot looks back and becomes a pillar of salt. And what happens? Vayashkem Avraham baboker el mamakom asher amad sham et pnei Hashem. So Abraham gets up early in the morning, and he goes to the place where he had stood before God prior to this, when he was advocating on behalf of Sodom and Gomorrah, and asking God, will you please save the place for the sake of, a number of righteous people. So once again, Abraham is seeing that the fate of people are in the balance. And in this case, it's not the entire town, because the entire town's getting wiped out. It's his family. It's his nephew Lot and Lot's daughters. These are kin to Abraham. Once again, he assumes the same position as he had when he pled on behalf of the entire town. This time, the sense is he's like, I'm very concerned about the fate of my family. And he's in the same place where he had been advocating prior, and he's standing still. Okay, so these are two examples of what we would consider to be some form of prayer taking place, a petition where there's a lot at stake, and the person who's doing the petitioning is standing still in deference to the person who's going to be making the decision and meting out the punishment, making the decision, but at the same time, very active in the sense that he's advocating. Okay. Now, let's take a look at a couple of other examples here. In the parsha we just read, Miketz, what do we have here? We have the famous Joseph story. Okay, so we know somewhat about Joseph and his brothers. It's a long tale, and it's certainly a story for another time. But at the end of the day, he had been sent to the jail in Paro's jail, and he is finally released, and he's going to meet Paro. He's going to meet the Pharaoh. And what does it say? Vayosef ben shloshim shana v'yamdu lifnei Paro melech Mitzrayim. And Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh. Same word, Amad, same word. So here you have a case of somebody, once again, standing in front of an authority figure, a decision maker, having to defer to that people. And in this case, it's a big deal because he's kind of petitioning for a job. There's going to be a famine, he predicted. Egypt needs a good chief executive officer to run things, manage the inventory. So there's a lot at stake here. And the same word is used, he's standing, and there's a big decision that's got to be made. He's standing still, he's deferring, but there's got to be a negotiation going on. There's a plea going on. Okay, standing still. Later on in this story, we see the word used again. And how is it used here? So later on in the story, we learned that Joseph's brothers came from Canaan. They went to Egypt, and he put them through the ringer as far as they didn't know him, he knew them. Can he trust them? Winding his way to some kind of reconciliation, but as part of his putting them to the test, he dismissed them, and he made them appear before him again. And when they appeared before him again, after being caught allegedly red-handed with stuff he accused them of stealing, what happened? Vayirdu Mitzrayim v'yamdu lifnei Yosef. And they went to Egypt, and they stood before Joseph. So here you have, once again, people having to defer to a higher authority. I mean, he was running the place, and they knew he was running the place. And decisions had to be made regarding their fate, and they stood still before him. Okay. So these are just 4 examples of how this word that implies standing still is in the context of standing still before an authority figure, being still, and having to defer to their authority, but at the same time, there's something on the line. This is not blind obedience. There's some kind of petition going on. Because as you read later with the story of the brothers, they kind of pled with Joseph. We'll see this in the parsha coming up. You know, please spare us, type of thing. They are receptive to what he's going to do, but they're willing to work. They want to have a say in the fate. Okay. Okay. Now the question is, how can standing still make you ready and receptive? I'm going ahead and I'm saying that this word, I am Daled, is standing in support of someone, deferring to them. Okay. In support of someone. Okay. There happens to be a form of standing meditation called Zhanjong. And it actually, as I understand it, is a root of Tai Chi, meaning that those practitioners who developed the art of Tai Chi incorporated this standing meditation into that practice. And that's what it says. A dynamic form of standing meditation from ancient China. Zhanjong is a standing meditation where you stand still. The initial goal is to relax and sink all the tension in your body beneath your feet. This standing method cultivates the body's natural energy called qi. It's a simple practice with extraordinary mental and physical benefits. You can practice it anywhere. For creative professionals and knowledge workers, Zhanjong offers a fast and effective means to recharge your energy, reduce stress, gain superior mental clarity, and stay focused. Zhanjong helps rebalance your energy from your head to the center of your body. The Chinese call this center the lower dantian. That's a fist length below your belly button. The Japanese call it the hara. The center point is below the navel, down the width of 2 or 3 fingers. By learning to bring some of your awareness to this region, you begin integrating your body with your mind. This helps you reconnect with your instincts and your gut feelings, leading to clearer thinking to make effective decisions. You gain more energy, improve your focus, concentration, and effectiveness, or whatever you do. Although there are thousands of forms of Qigong, which is like Tai Chi, most of them use a derivative, Zhanjong, as a foundational practice. Zhanjong means standing like a tree, pile standing or post standing. As the name implies, Zhanjong is a standing practice where one stands still in an upright posture as if standing like a tree. I've done this. It's wonderful. And it makes you aware of how good or bad your posture is, how well you hold up your head, where your tension points are, so that you can mindfully relax them. You're in a position where you're holding structure and you're standing still. If you guys become interested in this, then email me or text, and we'll devote more time in the workshop on this. But here's what I want to bring to your attention. People who practice Zhanjong are standing still. They're standing there with structure, and look at the benefits. They're connecting to their instincts, their gut feelings. They're gaining energy. They're improving focus, concentration, and effectiveness, whatever they do. Now, these are the neurological and physiological benefits of this standing meditation. Now, let's go back to the Amidah. Let's go back to all the examples in the Bible where we were talking about somebody standing still in front of an authority figure. So we're talking about Does standing help you be receptive? Are you supporting someone? I'm saying that this form of meditation kind of shows the readiness that you can get into. Those people that are Abraham in those two cases, and Joseph in the case, and Joseph's brothers, if they were standing in this Zhanjong position, they were ready to act. They were ready to do what the authority figure said after some negotiation, but their body had to be in the state of readiness in order for them to execute those orders. I mean, just imagine if you were standing in front of anybody, and any authority figure, ready to do what they told you to do after some negotiation, but you were slumped over, you weren't ready, maybe you were a little tired, maybe your arm was bothering you, maybe your breathing wasn't so great. You wouldn't be ready, willing, and able to do what you're supposed to do. Standing still in the right position empowers you to act fully on what you're going to have to do. So getting back to the Amidah, if you are standing still and saying the Amidah, and you're standing still the right way that empowers you with this Zhanjong position, then what you're doing is you're standing in front of God and saying, God, I'm ready to act. And so when you say the blessings about, asking for the ingathering of the exiles or healing for somebody, whatever you're asking for, you're basically putting your money where your mouth is, saying, God, I'm asking you to help this, and here I am ready to work with you on this. Call me into action. Okay. And so you can see that we can see why somebody would be discouraged from shuckling, from moving back and forth when they're saying the Amidah. You're not in a state of readiness there. Because maybe you're thinking, you're feeling good. That's not the state of readiness. You got to be able to move, so to speak. So you're saying, God, I'm reporting for duty. I want to help you with the ingathering the exiles. I'm ready to act. Tell me what we got to do, type of thing. So that's why I'm saying that we could see how important it is to stand still when saying the Amidah, so you could assume this readiness. And I'll give you one other example about how this word can mean standing in support of someone or something. The Hebrew word for column is amud. Column, standing still, but supporting. A column supports a roof. Okay, if that column was bent, was tilted, wasn't straight up, that roof would collapse. If that column had a crack in it, that roof would collapse. If that column was made of inferior materials, that roof would collapse. So and that's why the Zhanjong practitioners and the ancient Chinese use the symbol of a tree, because a tree is rooted. A tree is not going to bend. A tree is upright. A tree supports. So similarly, we assume that position because we don't want any weak links. We want to be in a position where we can support the decision of the higher authority. Excuse me. Okay. Questions? All right. Let us continue. We'll continue with what Rabbi Kaplan says about the Amidah. Back to Jewish meditation. It is also important to close the eyes in the Amidah, especially during the first blessing, in order to get yourself into a meditative state. If you do not know the rest of the Amidah by heart, it can be said from a prayer book. The words of the Amidah should be said quietly, either in a soft, very soft voice or in a quiet whisper. The voice should be directed inward rather than outward. Okay. Closing the eyes. And obviously you've got to feel like you're in a safe place. Nobody's going to bother you. You don't have to be aware of anything. But closing the eyes will help you avoid distraction. It's like when we say the Shema. We don't want to have any distractions. We could have total focus on what we're doing. Okay. Then, very interestingly, listen to this, the pace of saying the Amidah. These methods will make the Amidah a more effective instrument of worship. If the Amidah is also to be a meditation, there is one more important condition, and this has to do with the pace at which the words are said. The Talmud relates that the original saints, Hasidim Rishonim, the early sages, used to take 1 hour to recite the Amidah. Used to take 1 hour. From the context, as well as from a number of Kabbalistic sources, it is obvious that these original saints used the Amidah as a meditation. This teaching provides an important clue to the pace at which the Amidah is to be said if it is to be used as a meditative device. A simple word count shows that the entire Amidah contains approximately 500 words. The original saints took an hour to say it, or some 3,600 seconds. Therefore, they said this prayer at a pace of approximately 1 word every 7 seconds. Baruch Ata. That's incredible. Have you ever done anything with a 7-second interval? And these guys were saying these 18, then became, I don't know if it became 19 at that point, 18 blessings at that pace, and it took an hour. I've taken a half hour. I tried this. Took a half hour. Didn't wait 7 seconds, a few seconds. It's hard. And frankly, if I hadn't had meditation training, I would have got lost. But you could see that if you do it at this pace, you're not doing speed davening. You're not just saying words. You are using it to elevate your consciousness. Okay. And he says to say the entire Amidah at this pace is a highly advanced form of meditation. However, this pace is not difficult to maintain for the first paragraph, which is the most important. So you can't start with the whole thing, start with the first paragraph and then you say it at regular tempo. Since the first blessing contains 42 words, to say it at the rate of a word every 7 seconds would take just under 5 minutes. This is a reasonable time, yet long enough to put one into a deep meditative state. Deep, if you have training, if you keep doing meditation, it'll be much easier to fall into a deeper state. If you don't meditate, you're going to have to work really hard at getting into a deep meditative state by saying the first paragraph with 1 word every 7 seconds. You just got to put the work in. This pace has the effect of quieting the mind in a most profound manner. It is a meditative state that appears subjectively to be very different than that obtained through ordinary mantra meditation or contemplation, because the words one is saying define the meditation at every point. All right, so he said this before, and it's worth repeating. The words you say affect you subconsciously, and that affects how you raise your consciousness. Saying Mary had a little lamb at this pace will not have the same effect as saying the Amidah at this pace. The brilliant sages who are spiritually conscious, they deliberately scripted these prayers so that with the words that themselves would help elevate you. That is something he says all the time. Words have an impact on your relationship with the universe. Okay. There are 2 basic ways in which you can pace the recitation of the words. You can draw out each word as long as possible and then pause briefly to let the meaning sink in. Baruch. Alternatively, you can recite the word and then wait for 7 seconds before saying the next word. Each method is effective in its own way, and either can be used depending on your preference. Okay. While reciting a word and for the period afterward, do not think of anything other than the simple meaning of the word. The significance of the words of the first paragraph of the Amidah will be discussed in the next chapter, which we can get to. Allow the words to penetrate your inner being, opening yourself to feel and see the meaning of each word. During the pause between words, the mind is hushed in anticipation of the next word and then cleared of all other thought. He says that a lot. He places a big emphasis on the use of, on the role your subconscious plays in your experience of the world. So what he's not saying is saying a word, then thinking over and over and like, what does that mean? What does it mean? Can it mean this? Can it mean that? It's not your thinking mind, it's your experiencing mind, your gut mind, your subconscious. Let it penetrate, what you're saying penetrate there. And you'll get your meaningful experience that way. Once you have said the first blessing in this manner, the rest of the Amidah flows easily. It is then a simple matter to recite the entire Amidah with a feeling of closeness to God and without any extraneous thoughts. Okay, now, visualization. Excuse me. Some people find it beneficial to combine the Amidah with a visualization technique. Some sources indicate that while reciting the first paragraph, one should attempt to visualize pure white light. Other sources state that one should visualize the letters of the 4 letters of Hashem's name. Still another source teaches that it is beneficial to visualize nothingness while saying this paragraph. The person who is familiar with these techniques may find them beneficial in enhancing the meditative experience of the Amidah. Another alternative is to concentrate on the spontaneous images that arise in the mind's eyes. Eventually, however, one learns that the most powerful technique of all is to use the words of the Amidah and nothing else. When the words will the mind, one becomes oblivious to all other thought. The words draw the person to God, and the mind becomes completely filled with the divine. In this manner, the Amidah can bring a person to some of the most profound spiritual experiences possible. Since it was composed for this purpose, excuse me, this is by no means surprising. Okay. So on the one hand, excuse me, on the one hand, he's encouraging us to use our powers of visualization when we're saying the prayer. But at the same time, he's saying, well, okay, but in the long run, don't use the visualization, let the words speak for themselves, so to speak. Okay. And so maybe that means that the act of visualization can help us appreciate the words more. Okay. Now, my experience has been that visualization is much easier said than done. And so what he's talking about, he's talking from the point of view of somebody who is a very experienced meditator, which he was, and was a fabulous visualizer. Later in other books, he talks about, he was a up and coming great physicist, and he would work out problems in his mind and visualize cubes, and he was very advanced in his cognitive techniques. But it's hard. So somehow he got to that point. We're going to learn a little bit about visualization now that can be used when reciting the Amidah, other prayers, or life in general. Okay. Okay. Move back to Stephen Siebold, expert on mental toughness. This is what he says. The great ones are products of their own imagination. While average performers think of imagination as child's play, the world class relies on it as a mental preview of things to come. Before champions make a move, they have lived out the scenario through imagination. The great ones know imagination is the first step in the design of the perfect house or the perfect life. Through this powerful faculty, they can preview their futures. Champions often go on sabbaticals to places of great natural beauty for the sole purpose of heightening their sense of imagination when pursuing the solution to a problem. Pros understand the power of their creative mind and strengthen their imaginative skills by drawing on them daily. The masses are oblivious to this awesome natural gift, but champions combine the power of imagination with the penchant for action, and the results are the stuff of which dreams are made of. As the Aborigines are fond of saying, the world class is literally dreaming their world alive. So here's an example of what he's saying, daydreaming and imagining, that's visualizing. And you can see how people kind of do it naturally. How often do you daydream? In today's world, we probably discourage that, but you do it naturally. So what Rabbi Kaplan's talking about is enhancing that and being able to deploy that technique at will. And what Siebold is saying is that people who really want to advance themselves do deploy it at will, and they imagine what they're going to do in business or in negotiation or whatever the story is going to be, but they actually work at doing that. As a side example, I will tell you this: that the kung fu teacher of my teacher learned from a Chinese master in Korea. Chinese master was teaching in Korea, and when this student, early in his training, he was told by his teacher, all right, you're going to have to spend a year in a monastery and train by yourself, which he did. He actually did that twice. 2 times he spent a year in a monastery training by himself. So he would have to visualize the combat techniques he was learning on imaginary partners. But when he came back from the monastery and was sparring with the other students, he was wrecking them. He was so advanced in his fighting technique because he imagined it so realistically that it got into it. His body knew what to do. He was very successful at imagining what the opponent's doing here, what the opponent's doing here. And then when he entered real situations, his body was on automatic, just doing what it had to do. And he was crippling people to the point where the teacher wouldn't let him fight anymore. So that's an example about how of the real benefit you can gain from really visualizing. Okay, another example. Champions feed their vision and starve their fear, again by Siebold. All great philosophers seem to agree that human beings become what they think about most of the time. For this reason, the world class creates compelling visions written with great attention to detail and fueled by emotion. And then they think about their vision all the time. The great ones seem to go through 4 stages of mental evolution after creating a world-class vision. The first stage brings them increased mental clarity, which occurs as a result of putting their dreams on paper. The second stage is an intensified focus on the vision, which occurs as a result of the performer thinking about the vision morning, noon, and night. The third stage turns their intensified focus into a burning desire, which is often fueled by the frustration of seeing and believing the vision is often fueled by the frustration of seeing and believing the vision is reality on the mental plane, but not yet on the physical plane. Champions often develop credible visualization and self-talk skills that convince the subconscious the vision they project on the movie screen of their mind is real, when at the same time the performer's conscious mind knows it's not. This creates what psychologists call cognitive dissonance, or 2 thoughts, cognitions that are inconsistent. Since the human mind hates to be inconsistent, it drives the performer to take action and make the vision a reality. This success-driven behavior creates the final stage, which occurs when the vision turns to an obsession, a healthy obsession. So just imagine if you were davening the Amidah or any other prayer, and you envisioned what a world would be like of people being killed, or all the exiles being gathered into Israel. Just imagine that. And going through all the details, or when you're talking about Jerusalem, picturing Jerusalem and all the details there. Just imagine how energized you would be and motivated to act as a result of your tefillah. You'd be thinking, what you'd be thinking, well, what can I do now? Is this a realistic vision? Your body would be saying, well, I'm picturing people being healed, but I know people that aren't yet healed. What can we do about that? So that to me seems to be a very necessary result of your davening, to want to spring into action, because your vision of what you're praying for is not exactly what you know to be existing yet. So what can we do to usher it in? It's not just asking God to do it. You're sitting there reporting for duty, saying, all right, God, this is what we agree is got to happen. What can I do? So that should be the result of your davening. Okay. And this is, as you can see from these guys, this is what they do all the time to create the world for themselves. You know, business and finance, whatever it is. Religious people got to do this too. Okay. Lastly, we're going back to Commander Mark Divine. Building your mind gym. Okay. He talks about a practical method to develop your visualization skills. This is what he says. To develop your visualization skills and to give structure, focus, and momentum to your practice, whatever your practice is, we're going to build a gym in your mind, a special room where you will do your mental training. Eventually, visiting your mind gym will become a habit that will immediately center you and help you maintain front sight focus, channeling all your willpower and energy toward whatever you seek to achieve. It's particularly useful as framework for your mental projections. Find a comfortable position, close your eyes, and let the world begin to fade away. Take a few deep breaths to center yourself. Focus on the breath as it enters and leaves your body, in and out, in and out. Follow your breath to stillness. Bring your awareness to the here and now, and let all thoughts and worries of the day, all noisy distractions around you, just flow on through your mind without taking hold. Let it go. Now imagine yourself walking down a path. You are not in a hurry, but you see a set of stairs off to the right in the distance. You walk to the stairs and turn to look down. There are 10 steps. You slowly walk down, taking a full breath with each step. 10, 9, 8. When you reach the bottom, you see an archway. You can see the detail he's building in his mind of this place. This is the door to your training area where you will build your mind gym. You take another breath and step through the door. You are now in your special training area. And he's talking to people that practice martial arts and stuff, but obviously applies to anything. It may look familiar to you. Look around and behold the beautiful surroundings. Whatever shows up for you is okay. It may be a beach or a mountain or a valley. It may not even seem to be from this planet. In this place of yours, gravity has no effect, and you can do anything you want for your own good or for the good of humanity. No one else can come into this place unless you invite them. This is where you will come to meditate, visualize, practice skills, and seek healing in the future. Now let's begin to construct your mind gym in this space. The mind gym can look any way you want to imagine it. My mind gym, says he, is on a mountainside, has a wooden floor but no ceiling, a space to train in yoga and hand-to-hand combat, and a seated mat for meditating. It looks somewhat like a yoga studio or a martial arts dojo. So now build yours. Does it have windows, or is it open to the sky? Are the floors wood or carpeted? What colors or types of artwork decorate the walls? What equipment do you need? Leave one wall blank to use as a screen for mental projection work. Otherwise, fill this gym with whatever you might need to practice in your mind and whatever brings you a sense of peace. Today, this first visit, all you need to do is build the space. When you're finished and satisfied with your work, express gratitude for this gift of a safe, pristine place to train. Now leave your mind gym and make your way back to the doorway. Look back and review your handiwork. When you're ready, turn and step through the door and then climb the steps back up to your outer conscious self one at a time. Each step brings you closer to your normal wide awake state. When you reach the top, follow the path back into the active world, slowly bringing awareness to each part of your body. You will feel alert and energized as you open your eyes to end the exercise. So a few things. Obviously, that's a lot of detail. And obviously, most people don't have that visualization detail down yet. Obviously, it takes a lot of attempts. This guy has done it through a lot of hard work. But now he can do this. Now he has a place where if he wants to imagine anything related to training or business, whatever, he has a whole structure in his mind to get it done. It's just like if you want to cook something, you go to your kitchen. You've already set up the kitchen. You know where the food is. You know where the pots are, on and on and on. You want to go to bed. You got the bed in there and the clothes and this and that. So similarly, you create the same space in your mind to create a picture of exactly what you want to do wherever you want to do it. And it takes time and detail to decorate it and design it, just like it takes time and detail to decorate a physical space. But if you put in the effort to design this space, then your visualization powers will be top notch for prayer or whatever else you want to visualize. Questions? Okay. We are now going to turn off the sharing. We're going to turn off the recording.